Okay, I think we'll get started. Can someone from my team confirm that you can see my screen okay?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. So welcome everybody. My name is Gary Christ, Vice President of Dynamics at Cambay Consulting. So what we're going to go through today is Microsoft Dynamics Customer Insights. And we're going to also try to incorporate that into a little bit of a user story. And then we'll go into the product a bit and show you around. A little bit of an agenda. Again, we're going to kind of stay at a high level, do a little bit of an overview, and then we'll do a deeper dive and finally a demonstration. Feel free to ask questions. If you do have any, you can ask them or pop them into the chat, and we can kind of get them addressed as we go through the webinar as well. So a little bit about Cambay Consulting. We're a global organization, about 1,300 consultants worldwide. We basically specialize in everything Microsoft. So all three Microsoft cloud platforms, Azure, Dynamics, and M365. So a little bit of an overview. So what is Customer Insights? So the intent of Customer Insights is to make it easy to connect customer-related data from multiple sources and consolidate it into one view or to customer profiles. And that's an area that people struggle with, is all this disparate data. The other thing that Customer Insights provides the ability to do is not only join the data, but also to be able to map the data and merge it together. So for instance, you have two different types of data sets, but a common key. Customer Insights will allow you to merge that together and do matching for duplicates and really provide you with then one rich data set. So what's the point of that? So we've merged our data, and then we have the ability to unlock insights or machine learning or learning on and learn about that customer and really try to determine some personalized experiences from this data that we've merged together. So not only does it give us that single view of a customer, but it also allows us to act on that data in different ways. So again, then these profiles that we create can be exposed in multiple ways. They can be exposed through a simple Power BI. They can be exposed right through Dynamics if you're a Dynamics 365 CE user. They can also be put into dashboards, or we can enact on it. We can leverage something called Power Automate, which is a workflow tool, and we could send alerts on somebody that maybe hasn't purchased in 30 days or bought something in 60 days, whatever that might be. And then we can build segments on this data that we've merged together and allow that data to be used with different marketing programs and different marketing platforms. So really the key is that we're getting the data together, and then we have the ability to act on that data. And also it all sits in the Microsoft platform. So before we kind of dive a little bit deeper into it, I wanted to kind of get a feel for the audience. So we have a few survey questions. Alan, if you wouldn't mind launching the first survey question, I'd appreciate it. We'll give a minute or so, and then we'll move on to the next. Okay. One more question. Alan, if you're able to launch that, I'd appreciate it. What we're trying to understand here is just kind of where people are with their data. If they do have consolidated views already, or if they're in a situation like most people are, where their data is kind of siloed. Okay, so we'll dive into it. So again, the whole point of Customer Insights is to deliver personalized experiences with customer-centric processes. So it's all about the customer. So how do we provide better data to the people that need it, to our customers, to your customers, and enable us to act on that data? And part of the rationale for this is that statistics show that customers' expectations are growing. 91% of consumers are more likely to shop with businesses who recognize them, remember, and provide relevant offers and recommendations. And again, that kind of leads back to the insights. If we can get this data, get it blended together, now we can act on it and remind people that maybe they forgot something or they haven't bought or whatever that might be. And also 81% of buyers want businesses to get to know them and understand when to approach them and when not to. And again, similar to what we said before, if somebody buys a certain product on a quarterly basis, then maybe we can incent them to make sure they do because we have that trend and we can recognize it. And I think the other key here is today's experiences are falling short. I'm sure we've all experienced it. 65% of customers are frustrated by inconsistent experiences across channels. So what people's demands are now is that if I go to the web, I should be able to see the exact same thing from my mobile phone, or if I talk to somebody on the phone. 74% of customers are frustrated by irrelevant content that they're exposed to on websites, and up to 40% of them will leave. And I think we find that as people go and browse the websites, if it's hard to find data, or if the website recognizes them, kind of serves up that data for them based on their preferences, they're more likely to stay and more likely to continue through that website and purchase down the road or call us directly. 61% of customers have stopped doing business with at least one company because of poor customer service. People don't have patience anymore, and they'll just move on to the next organization if they don't find what they need. So what's the customer insights going to do for us? It's going to close the gap by merging this data and allowing us to gain that insight into the customers and be able to act on that data. So the data can come from multiple channels: demographic data, behavioral data that can be purchased through third parties, transactional data from all our internal systems. And statistics have shown that by doing that and being able to act on this data, that there's an increase of revenue of between 5 and 10%, and also a decrease of cost because it's much easier to access this data and be able to act on it. So what did our customer analytics look like in the past? I'm sure we've all experienced our custom built platforms. Everything was hard coded. We had to put in requests for data, for reports, and wait weeks, months for them. And our applications were siloed. So in a minute I'll have an example, but a lot of times our sales data sits in one system, our accounting data sits in one system, and they don't talk to each other at all. Time to implement was measured in months, and it required real heavy technical experience. And also we had different stacks of storage for KPIs and machine learning. Again, we're all different. And compliance wasn't even thought of. So with customer insights, one, it's a web-based solution. You don't have to worry about the configuration, storage of that data. And it is configurable and very extensible. And the insights can be embedded right into your CRM so that somebody can see them as part of their normal everyday work. Time to implement is short, and it's ready to run by business users. There's a little bit, and you'll see it as we get into it, a little bit of knowledge needed to set it up initially in order to identify databases and data sets in order to get at this data. But it is integrated into one cloud platform, and it's also compliant as well. So it handles all the security, standard security Microsoft has to secure that data. So again, now that we get this data, the whole key to it is what are we going to do with it? So we can start to do things like predicting customer intent. We can look for trends and patterns in our data, and we can also build, different segments and marketing segments within that data to enable us to market to people smartly instead of just blasting out emails, which I'm sure we've all experienced. And also we can drive a personalized engagement across our channels, which is really key. We can also automate these processes and through things like a Power Automate or a workflow platform, be able to act on this data and address issues that come up very quickly. So as we try to take this information on what customer insights is, and we try to bring it down to the real world, we have a security solutions provider that has about 60,000 customers, residential, business, and national accounts. And they have offices, around or throughout North America. And they're also using multiple systems. So they have a system for their sales tracking. They have a field service system for their installations and their equipment support. They have a totally separate system for accounting. And then, being that they're a security provider, they also have a trouble alert tracking system as well. So whenever an alarm goes off and calls the police, calls the fire department, whatever it might be, then that gets logged and that gets tracked and acted upon. And then then you have traditional customer service where people call in for information and requests. So here they're dealing with probably 3 different systems. And the data, did not mix, and they had no visibility into, for instance, their accounting system or the trouble alert tracking system to really understand any of that data. So again, they had problems seeing one view of the customer. They were not able to see customer spend because the accounting sat in another system. So they had no visibility into month, year. They also had no visibility into, how many tickets were there. How many times did the alarm go off? Were they false alarms? Were they real issues? What were they? How were they resolved? And then also they did not have that complete view of the customer. So they'd be talking to somebody, and they had to go to another system to get the ticketing information on trouble tickets, and they had to request for accounting to get the accounting information. We'll jump down a little deeper. So based on the example that we discussed a minute ago, their data was all over the place. So they had some internal data. They had external data. They had some portals as well where data sat, and of course, other data we have externally. We have social data. We had event data with different events that were being held, and then they had installers and they had partners as well that actually housed data. So this data was all disparate, and again, very tedious for them to look at a customer, i.e., like a Best Buy or one of the major national accounts, and really understand what was going on with their systems. So with customer insights, the strategy is really to ingest any data source, and we'll show you in a minute some of the different types of data that can be joined and merged into the system. But the big strength to it is really the data unification. So it provides the ability to unify this data. We talked a little earlier about the whole match merge process. And then we can enrich that data. It can be enriched in multiple ways. There's different services out there where we can purchase data, so we can kind of aggregate our customer data against some national averages and show that again all in one view. So again, we can identity resolution. So as we have this data coming from multiple sources, we have the ability to match it together and make sure a customer is only getting counted once as we go through this view. And then of course we can segment it, and then we can act on it. Okay? We can start to build some longer term analytics and look at Whether it be customer spend or customer service tickets by industry, by type of customer that might be. And it enables us to, again, track that and then act on it. And again, it actually makes our employees more empowered to be able to provide intelligent answers to questions when asked for by the customer. So as we look at, kind of at a high level on how this whole platform is put together, we have these connectors out there, and I'll show you a full list of them, that then take this data from these external sources and ingest it into our platform. So that's pulling it into an Azure data lake, so it's a secure platform. We don't have to worry about security. That's all handled for you. And it ingests that and has the ability then to do the map and match and bring all that data together to act upon it, and then ultimately push it out to external sources, whatever that might be. It could be, acting on the data and sending someone an email reminder or a mobile reminder, or just showing it through a dynamic screen so that a customer service person can see the whole view. This is just an example of those different sources kind of coming in from multiple places, and we unify that data, and again, it's all stored in an Azure data lake. But here you can see examples of data coming in from a CRM, website, app analytics, as well as an SAP accounting system, and that data is all coming in, being unified and stored in a secure fashion so that it can be acted on within the customer insights. And here's a list of the standard data sources that are available out of the box. And you'll see some common ones here, such as Excel, OData, Common Data Service is part of the Microsoft platform. You'll see SAP, you'll see Salesforce. So there's quite a few connectors already built, and again, you'll see some basic ones here: JSON, XML. So there's a lot of different ways to bring data into the system, and you'll see the Fire connector, which is for healthcare. So there's many options, and if you don't see a connector here, Microsoft's always adding connectors. But also, there's still availability. In most cases, you'll see generic adapters for like SQL and Oracle and IBM DB2. So connectors can be built as long as we can identify that data source. Or, worst case, the data would have to be exported out to like an Excel or a CSV file, and it could be integrated that way. So let me jump in and do a little bit of a demo here. Okay, so as we go into customer insights, I'll come back to this screen in a minute, but you'll see the ability to have multiple data sources. So we can have as many data sources as we want set up here. And again, these are all being merged together and stored within the Azure data lake. And within each of these sources, we can also have multiple entities. For instance, Dynamics, you'll see there's 4 entities here. And we'll go to the detail here of the entities list. And here we can see that we have these different sources that have been set up, and each of these sources then will have the multiple entities set up for those sources, so that we have Dynamics and the full databases for each of these. Okay. So then, this is the area we were talking about earlier, the ability to actually unify this data. So as we have each of our databases that we had already mapped into our data source, we have, in this case, we have contacts from Dynamics, we have customers from a point of sale system, and then we have some data coming in from some website applications as well. So within each of these, we identify our primary key, and within that, we identify the data that we want and the type of data that it is. So as we go in and we edit fields, we have the ability within each of these data tables to turn on and off the data fields that we want to be included. So you'll see here some of the additional data entities that we have brought in as our data source. We didn't include that in this case into this map merge process, but we could check the box here for cases, then we could then bring our case data in as well. But you'll see we have our dynamics data, and we've checked all these fields so that these are the fields that we are including from our dynamics database. And we can turn on and off the data. So realizing that some of these entities have hundreds of fields, we don't need to worry about that. We can restrict that and only bring in the data fields that are relevant to us and to our need. And this is where I said it. You don't have to be a programmer, but maybe a little bit technical whenever this is being set up to understand these data sources, and probably more importantly, how these data sources are keyed within the file. So in this case, we have a contact ID. In the case of a customer, it's called a loyalty ID, but basically they're the same thing. So this is our match field here to determine which contacts and customers actually blend together. And we'll go and we'll show that here. So as we go and we look at our match section, you can see we have 10,000 unique records, and we've matched them with 10,000 records from the point of sale, from the customer point of sale system. So here it gives us statistics on what our match rate is, and then also we have the ability to build the rules on what denotes our match. So as we go in here, we can see here that we're matching on the email and the full name. So that would be a perfect match, and that's matching against the contact entity to determine that we have the proper record. So what this is all doing in the background is not only matching these records, but then it's also merging these records together. So what it's done is it's merged these records together and created one data set that has all the fields from the combined 4 databases we showed earlier, and it's brought them all together into one data lake and into one view. So here you'll see where it's done some of the matching and merging. So we have 3 first names because it's taken one from each of the systems, and we also tell it which one is our primary, which system is our host system. There was one, we had Dynamics as our primary. So it's going to use the data from Dynamics first, and then if that data doesn't exist in Dynamics, then it'll kind of go top down and show us that data that's merged together. So now we have our data matched and merged, so we build our data set, and now we have the ability to enrich this data set. And this comes in from some third-party applications. We can purchase detailed information on brand data. So as we go in and we look at brand data, so this customer has an affinity to purchase these types of brands based on some of the information we have on file for them, based on their demographics, based on their size of their company, based on their purchase. Whatever those demographics are, we can build that criteria as part of our enriched data, and then also interest. So based on the customer demographic, these are the types of things that this customer might be interested in. So now we've enriched our data, and now we have the ability to kind of look at this data as one view. So now we have those 4 data sources all blended together, and we have a full view of our contact with all the the data source information that we brought in, our demographic data. We also see we've had 2 online purchases in the last 24 days. And it's also brought our activities in. So it's brought our activity information in from all the systems, and now we have that merged all in one place. So we can see that we have a case, we have 3 point of sale purchases, 51 emails, they access the website 3 different times, and all that information is aggregated below so that we can take a look at the detail of that information. We see unopened emails, and we see information on their purchases from point of sale. So all this information gets aggregated into customer insights and can then again be displayed through other avenues. So primarily we could bring it up in Dynamics itself, and it would aggregate that this data all within a Dynamics record and show us this information pulled in from all these sources. Or we can do it through Power BI, like I said before, and other sources. So here's our interest levels and our brand levels, and you'll also see some other metrics that have been created here. To here's our churn risk is 0.20, and what's their online spend been in the last month. So this has been all aggregated together in a dashboard for us. So we can also then take that a step further. So again, kind of tying back to the example we were talking about before when we had our securities customer. So now we've taken their data, merged all these sources together, and now we're able to build these segments. So what's their average spend? How many open support cases? How many trouble tickets have been called in? How much have they spent with us monthly as we track through invoices in our accounting system? So all these segments can be built based on whatever criteria you're interested in, and then these segments of data can then be used by other systems and other sources. Okay. And again, we do have I showed you the ability to aggregate those activities, but this is the area where we set those up. So this is the activity transactional data coming in from all the different systems. Then we set that up here and aggregate it all in the activities, and then it's merged together within the system as well. And again, lastly, we have this aggregated customer view that shows all our data. More than likely, you wouldn't be accessing it directly through Customer Insights, although you could, but it would probably be exposed through another application. Let me jump back to my PowerPoint. So we've gone through kind of the high level setup of how we got here with our customer insights, and I showed you the customer insights program itself, where we actually went in and you could see the sources being brought in and merged together. So what does that give us? It's taken all this disparate data and now it's merged it together into a 360 view of our customer. And I know that nowadays that's a big word, a 360 view, but truly within the Dynamics Insights, it is pulling that together. And I think you could see it earlier as it blended that data from all the different sources for us so that we could see it all in one place and actually act on it. And the nice part about it is that, while today we set it up, with certain data fields, as I showed you in that screen, if a month from now we determine that, hey, we need some additional data fields, it's just as simple as going in and reconfiguring, turning those fields on, and there's an area where it runs and re-aggregates that data and pulls it into the data lake. So this data lake would constantly be building and building that data for us then to leverage for machine learning and other insights down the road. But anyway, so we now have our complete view of the customer, and now we're able to do, the views that I showed you, but we're also able to aggregate all this data into a dashboard that can be exposed through multiple sources but it can take that customer or those experiences or different market segments or key customers. You know, the one in particular that we were talking about earlier really had some key information that they always needed based on their national accounts. They would get phone calls from the larger organizations, your Best Buys and Targets, and they'd want to know, you know, what was the how many cases did we have per branch and per area and per region, and all that could be structured into these Power BI reports to enable us to view that easily by a customer service or a salesperson. So again, just to summarize, I know we had this slide before, but I wanted to kind of roll back through what we've talked about. So as we kind of set the stage early, we talked about ingesting our data so you could see through the customer insights how we were able to build the multiple data sources and be able to pull that data in to the Azure Data Lake. And then we were able to then unify that data with our match merge process and map it, and also be able to identify who the individuals are and make sure we only had one view of a customer as opposed to a duplicate view. And then we were able to segment that for marketing purposes to be able to use it for other programs down the road. And then we were able to enrich it with marketing data and purchasing data from external sources. And then lastly, we're able to leverage all this data that we built and be able to work with that data intelligently and gain insights and knowledge about that customer to be able to use for the future. And lastly, I think that the employee now should have a better view of the customer and better access. And again, as we showed, it is a flexible platform. So as we get additional data sources, as we maybe purchase, you know, more data from a third-party source, those can be linked in very easily. So a couple questions at the end here. Alan, if you wouldn't mind launching this, I'd appreciate it. Do you people on the phone today have any tools similar to this? And if so, you know, how does it work? I'll give you a minute or so to answer that question. And then, based on what you've seen, are you interested in talking further? I think you know, we could definitely do a more personalized demonstration and actually link a few of your own data sources, whether it be through Excel or a database provided, and be able to kind of show you a little bit about what that looks like. So again, I'll give you a minute to answer that. Okay, thanks. So if there's any questions, feel free to ask. Upcoming webinars, you'll see a list here. These will be published on our website, and I'm sure you'll get information. But so we do have a Teams and Teams automation webinar in February. In March, we're going to do a webinar on Microsoft Dynamics marketing, which will actually build a bit on what we've done today in customer insights, because we can leverage our customer insights data and our segments to feed into our Dynamics marketing solution to enable us to build customer journeys and build marketing journeys that then take advantage of that learned data that we've accumulated. Then we have a security webinar in March, as well as in April, we'll examine a little deeper Microsoft Dynamics customer service. Then we have an Azure Sentinel in April as well. So this website will be recorded. It was recorded. If you, we'll post a copy of it. Also, if there are any questions, I'm open to answer them now.
Gary, we have a few questions for you. How do you match the external data set without a shared key?
Without a shared key, you can match it through other mechanisms. So in that one example, when we had the customer insights mapping and matching, we were able to match on a name. So even though we may not have a customer ID of a 123 or whatever it might be, we could then look at other ways. We could match on phone numbers. We could match on email addresses. We did a project for a Major League Baseball team, and there was no common key as that data was coming from like Ticketmaster and from other sources. So what we had to do was, again, be a little bit creative and make some decisions there on how people tend to purchase, and the decision was made that we'll use an email address. So for the most part, and I know I do this, if I'm buying tickets personally, I always tend to use the same email address because I have my logins all set up. So that email address was able to push in from Ticketmaster, and we were able to match against that email address to be able to map that ticketing data into the system based on that email address. So then we were able to provide not only the fact that this person purchased tickets, but also where their preferences are. I tend to like an aisle seat in a lower bowl or something, and it was able to then determine that, so that whenever a person was calling me about, let's say I bought 5 individual game tickets, then they were able to get alerted that I purchased 5 individual game tickets and be able to then say, hey, would you like to buy a 10-game package? But it was all mapped on the email address in that case. So kind of a long-winded answer, but you'd have to look for commonalities within that data set, and then it can match based on that. And in that example I had earlier, where it was last name and email, so it doesn't just have to be one field. It can be a combination, and it can be pieces of those fields as well.
Thank you, Gary. The next
Sure.
question I have is, if my software does not already have a connector listed, can I still use the customer insights?
Yeah, I mean, I think we'd have to identify what the database was in that case. So there may not be a connector for a specific product, but the underlying database might be Microsoft SQL or Oracle or SAP, in which case then there's generic adapters already out there for most of the major databases, where we could then link it that way. The other alternative, a lot of software products have the ability to extract data. So we could extract that data, I think, to an Excel or a CSV, and we could pull it in that way. The preferred would be the database route, because if we can connect through the database, then we can read all the data tables directly.
Thank you, Gary. The next one that I have for you is, if I'm not using the Dynamics 365, does the customer insights the customer insights is valued for me?
Yeah, and I mean, the name of the product is a little bit deceiving because it's called Microsoft Dynamics Customer Insights, but it's really part of a family of products, and the product itself runs standalone. So it's not dependent on Dynamics. So you could leverage or expose those customer insights through Power BI or through another application, because its data then is stored in an Azure data lake. So as long as the application is open enough, whether it be a Dynamics or Salesforce or most other products out there on the market, that data could be connected into to those other sources. So it's just part of a family of product, but not dependent on Dynamics at all.
Thank you, Gary. The next one that I have for you is, do I have to have a programmer set up the customer insights?
And now I think as you saw as I went through, and trust me, I'm not a programmer, so I was able to go in and link my data sources. I think that you need a little bit of technical understanding of at least where the data is and how to log in or how to connect to the data sources. In most cases, the data source would have like when I was connecting to the Dynamics data, you still have to authenticate to make sure that you're allowed to see that data set. So no, you do not need a programmer, but you do need a little bit of technical understanding of configuring and accessing databases.
Thank you, Gary. And is the data within the CRM, right, the customer insight, how secure it is, and is it secure?
Yes, well, the data is through Customer Insights is stored in an Azure data lake. So it's stored in the cloud, managed by Microsoft, and you, the user, then set up access and set up rights to access that data. So yes, it's secured, and it's managed again by Microsoft, and and again follows all the same security protocols. So it's a lot more secure than a lot of times just sitting in an Excel file somewhere.
Sure. The last one that I have, Gary, here on the list is, again, this is a request. So do you think it's possible for you to show the view of customer or generated actions available in Dynamics 365?
I don't have that view set up in my demo. No, I do not. I'm sorry.
Sure.
But basically, to describe it a little bit, so if you think of being in an account record, I have the ability to add that insights under that account record, either as a separate tab or directly under that record. But no, I'm sorry, I don't have a view of that in my Dynamics.
Sure. Thank you, Gary. I will wait for another minute to see if we get any questions.
Okay.
Right. All right, Gary. So I don't see any new questions coming in, and I think this is great. And Gary, really wanted to appreciate you taking out your time. This was a very insightful webinar, and thanks everyone for joining the webinar. And please look for our upcoming webinars, and we would love to have follow-up discussions and conduct 1 to hour free demos. POCs are there. We'll be more than happy to help you facilitate the conversations. And we are conducting a lot of these webinars. I think you have seen a list of webinars, but again, do keep an eye on our website for the upcoming webinars as well. Thank you everyone for taking your time and joining the
Thanks
webinar today.
Appreciate it.